So the next song I wanted to talk about was Mr. Forgettable by David Kushner. Really, I mean, everything he does is really cool, and there's a reason why he's blowing the fuck up right now. How'd you get brought into mix that project? Because you've done a couple records with him now.
Yeah. So Alexander23 produced that song.
There you go.
And he was like, let me have my guy mix it. So he connected us, and it was like a pretty straightforward mix.
Yeah. Are all the songs that you mixed for David, did Alexander do them?
No, just that one. And that was the first one. So after we did that one, then I started working with him with other producers as well.
That's great, man. That's nice. You know, I mean, you do good work, and good work brings in more work.
It's always the best when that happens.
Yeah. It's and you're also like so easy to work with too.
Nice.
It just makes it easy.
Yeah.
The thing I want to talk about that was also his vocal. He has such a unique, deep sounding vocal.
Totally.
So did you have any like trouble mixing his vocal and bringing out different frequencies than you normally would?
I think for that one and for all of his stuff that I've worked on, it's boosting a lot of top end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because when I get it, when I receive the stems, they're dark and it's vibey and cool. And like, I want to maintain that though. Right. So it's a balance of like, well, you want it to sound moody and emotional and like what you said, like dark, but you also want to have like clarity. And so again, I use the Ozone Vintage EQ.
There you go.
Go that top end, just go to town. I'm boosting top end left and right. It's a lot of top end.
Yeah, I mean, so with that, I guess attenuation, it really helps craft it in a way where it's not too much.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll also, like, I think for his stuff specifically, it's all very dark. The whole mix is dark. So I'll start on the mix bus.
Okay.
So I'll put that on the mix bus, and I'll kind of play with top end boost, low end boost, the low end boost and cut thing, the top end boost and cut thing. Yeah. Usually there's a spot in the mid range, like around 1.5K or 2K, something like that, where I can do a little dip.
Right.
I'm kind of just like doing a little bit of a smiley face curve.
Right.
And honestly, that EQ on the mix bus is like 50% of the mix a lot of the time. Okay. I can get very close just with that. And, you know, it's a trade-off. Like, I might do the top end and like the instruments sound really nice, but the vocal is now harsh. So I'll like maybe back it off a little bit or leave it on there, but now darken the vocal a little bit.
Right.
Or just move that EQ to the instrumental bus.
Yeah. Are you mostly a mixing through your mix bus kind of a guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. I kind of need to, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because it changes things a bit.
Of course.
The mix bus isn't super heavy-handed for me though.
Right.
But it's the starting point. It's definitely the starting point.
Yeah, it's the North Star.
It is.
You know,
truly.
Like, this is where we're going, and how do we get it to fit within there?
Gotta follow it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was gonna ask this question a little later, but I think it kind of pertains to what we're talking about now, where I think his songs and the songs that you've mixed for him, but especially in this one, is that you managed to find a really good balance of making it sound lo-fi, but also hi-fi at the same time.
Yeah.
Where it's like that guitar, it's got a very specific vibe to it where like it sounds like it was a shitty recording, but in like the best way.
Yeah.
And like saying, but I don't know, what was your approach when you work on his kind of stuff to like find that balance?
Try not to lose the vibe.
Right.
Maintain the vibe as much as possible, but enhance it. So like, how do you make it feel lo-fi and intimate and like it was a bedroom beat?
Right.
Because that character is nice.
That's what it is. I think that's why he's gotten so big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you maintain that, but also like expand it to be like a little bit more open and just like a little bit more big, I guess.
Yeah.
Cleaner.
It's like polished, like that
polished.
Little bit of polishing on
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, how do I polish this to where it brings out the lo-fi-ness and it doesn't just like get rid of it?
Right.
And, you know, I think it's like boosting the top end. I really do.
Yeah.
It's boosting the top end because the character of the sound or the character of each sound is in the mid-range. So that's where like the lo-fi stuff is.
Right.
That's where like the grit is at. So I kind of will leave that alone a little bit and like kind of frame around it. So like maybe it's boosting some low end and boosting top end, or getting rid of mud or pulling some instrumentation down to create more space for the mid range to be kind of funky and in your face.
Yeah.
But like I try and leave that stuff alone and just frame around it.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, it's like, it was the one thing when I was like listening to Mr. Forgettable for the first time in a minute yesterday and today, where I was like, damn, I think that's what the best artists who are like these bedroom lo-fi artists, when they blow up, it's like, yeah, it's because they found that balance of making it still sound bedroomy and lo-fi, but also like it can be played on top 40 radio.
Totally.
Still, I don't know many bedroomy songs that sound super bedroomy that make it past a certain point.
Totally.
Just because it's, the average listener's ears want that crispiness in a way.
Sure. Just like a little bit of clarity, I think is nice.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Something kind of interesting about that song also in specific, that one was recorded and then slowed down.
Oh.
Yeah. So when I got the stems from Alexander, he was like, heads up, like these are recorded at whatever BPM. And I'm pretty sure David wants this to be slower. Like, so David took home like the day of bounce or something like that and messed around with it and like slowed it down in Logic or something. I don't know. And then he was like, this is dope. Like, I like the slowed down version. And so I had to figure out a way to slow it down and mix it at the same time.
Right.
And I'm sure that kind of added to the lo-fi vibe.
I mean, did he re-record the vocal, or was like everything slowed down?
Everything is slowed down.
Wow, I could not tell. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you slow it down, or did they slow it down?
I slowed it down.
What did you? I'm curious. What algorithm are you using to slow it down? Are you like picking and choosing for each part, or like?
No. I either just did polyphonic in Pro Tools for all of them, or there's a chance I did rhythmic for any drum stuff.
Right.
I feel like if I had thought about it, I probably would have done the rhythmic for the percussive stuff.
Right.
But I feel like polyphonic would have worked just as well. So I did polyphonic on all of the stems, and I had the reference that David sent over, which was the slowed down version, and I just like warped all the stems to just match it.
Exactly what he did.
Yeah. And the pitch stayed the same though.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what I figured. Because otherwise, you just would have used Varispeed at that point.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it's like, it sounds great. I'm like very surprised. Was it like a huge tempo shift, or was it something pretty minor? If you had to guess.
Something in the middle.
Yeah.
Like significant, but it didn't like destroy the audio.
No, it sounds, I'm like, I can't express how surprised I am to hear that.
Like for David's stuff, I think most of the songs that I've done for him are some sort of speed adjustment.
Crazy.
He loves that type of thing.
I think it's always super important to like check your BPM. Because so often I find that like it's usually speeding up, especially most for pop music, but like just doing that puts like it in a new light, and it's almost always better.
Yeah.
Like, a little bit about me, but like Build a Bitch used to be way slower.
Wow.
When it was brought to Suburban and Ely, they sped it up, and they made the right choice.
Cool.
It was like, I think they brought it up by like 10 BPM, like a lot. And it was such a good choice.
Yeah. It's like that new perspective.
Yeah.
They listen to it and they're like, oh, like this is sick, but it needs to be just like 10 BPM faster.
So and that was like such a huge learning moment for me, where like almost every song I'll do a bounce, and then now I can do it in Pro Tools because they have the Elastique.
Yeah.
My bounce, I'll just make it slower and faster.
Oh, nice.
Just to like kind of hear.
Just to feel it out.
Just to feel, and it's like, you can usually tell right away.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this feels great faster.
Totally.
It's a good little experiment to do. The last question I had on this one, and I think it's not even a specific question to Mr. Forgettable, but the one thing I always appreciate about your mixes is that the low end always feels really good.
Nice.
What's your approach to having a really... the low end you always do, for me at least, because I know the before and after is even and present and harmonic in there. What's kind of your North Star for low end?
Yes. It's it's tricky one.
Yeah.
That's like that's the golden ticket, you know, how to get that nice low end.
Yeah.
I've found that like when people say, oh, this mix is, the low end is so tight, the way to get a tight low end is just to not have a ton of low end, honestly. Like you don't need a ton of low end in your bass, for example, or like maybe your bass can just come down in volume and that'll give you a tight low end. You know, you just carve out the low end a little bit, you know, don't go crazy, don't filter everything out, but like, you know, don't go crazy boosting low end as well.
Right.
I feel like I went through a phase where I'm like, oh, I need a better low end. I'm going to boost low end on everything. It's going to be really in your face and awesome, but it's just a muddy mess. So now I'm like, man, what I like to do is I'll listen to the song while I'm mixing and I'll mute the bass and then I'll bring it back in. And if when I mute it, like the whole song falls apart and it's like, whoa, like the whole floor just fell out, then it's too loud. And I'll kind of go back and forth. I'll bring it back in and I'll turn it down a little bit and then I'll mute it again. And I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I lost something, but like we're still grooving and stuff. It still feels good. And then I'll bring it back in. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the sweet spot. Because monitoring bass is so tricky as well. Yeah. Where it's so hard to get a judgment on if it's too loud or not. So doing this technique where like I'm muting it and unmuting it gives me like perspective shift constantly. And I can go off of that. Yeah. So I like to do that.